Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom.
Oh, I have my Yiddish class name.
Oh, okay. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine. Give it another minute or so.
Oh, sure. How are you this evening?
Good, all's good. My candlesticks may be too tall, though. I have my tall candlesticks, and with the background, of course, they disappear. They become.
Oh, they do.
So, but it'll be okay.
We'll manage.
We'll manage. That's right. That's exactly right. We will manage.
By the end of the service, they'll be lower.
Hopefully. Well, might be a miracle. You don't know. Okay, I have 6:30. I'm going to do the screen share. Hang on a sec. There we go.
I will mute.
Let's see if I can put that all there. I'll slide that over as far as it goes. There we go. Cantor, whenever you're ready.
Ya lai 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 lai, I lai 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 lai, ya lai 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 lai, ya lai ya lai 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 lai, I lai 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 lai, I lai 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 lai, I lai 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 lai, I lai 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 lai, I lai, I la la lai, I lai lai, I lai lai lai, I la la lai 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 lai, I la la lai 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 lai, I la lai, ya la la lai, ya lai 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 lai, I lai 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 lai, ya lai 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 lai, I lai 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 lai.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Here we are again on Zoom for the summer. We will have 2 outdoor services, one in the month of July, led by our rabbinic intern, Healy Slackman, and then another one in August, hopefully, led by the cantor and myself. There'll be Zoom backups for rain on those dates, but tonight here we are gathered again across the ether. And I have to say, I want to take a moment to reflect. Here we are. It's some of the latest sunsets of the season. Actually, of course, having gone through summer solstice, we'll start getting a little bit shorter sunsets, moving toward winter time. But it's going to be very tiny and imperceptible for a while. And one of the things that as I come into Shabbat after a very busy work week is trying to make that mental, spiritual, psychic transition. And some of that is conscious. Some of that is deciding to slow down and to make Shabbat our own. At the moment, though, I have to tell you a funny thing. So we got a challah for Shabbat. We ran out at the last moment because it turned out the challah we had was half of a challah. And I am sitting here right now in the study, and the challah is filling the room with this fragrance of baked bread. And it is one of those smells of civilization and humanity. And for me, it's smell of Shabbat is that smell of baked risen bread, not matzah. In all deference to the matzah lovers out there, but the smell of yeasty risen bread that seems to right now pervade my senses, and represents for me the beginning of Shabbat. So, whatever it is that helps you get settled in, I want to invite you to do so. So, find that comfortable chair, pour your Manischewitz or your grape juice or your Chateau Lafite, whatever right? Get your candles at the ready, so that you can make that transition into Shabbat. Maybe it's having a beautiful piece of art in front of you, kind of like the piece of art, our Shabbat art that's right up on the screen right now. Whatever it is, let's make and take that moment of transition as we look to welcome Shabbat. We're going to join with the kindling of Shabbat lights. The cantor is going to lead us, and as I was mentioning just a little bit earlier, I have tall candlesticks this week, which means that they're kind of momentarily going to obscure my face just so that we can see them. And if you have your candles at the ready, and cantor, whenever you're ready.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Amen.
Rabbi Kane once told me that when the Shabbat candles were too close to my face, people got worried that I was going to catch on fire. So I've moved the candles aside where, right, once you light Shabbat candles, you're supposed to let them be, unless there's a fear of, for safety's sake, we can move them. So we have kindled Shabbat lights, the last creative action, really not an action of Shabbat, but of the work week. And one of the things that kindling lights tells us is that we are partners with the divine in sanctifying time. Shabbat doesn't happen simply because the sun sets. In fact, we bring Shabbat earlier than sunset. Different customs, whether it's 20 minutes before, 45 minutes before. The Talmud argues you can start Shabbat as early as Wednesday and end it as late as Tuesday if you're willing to make all the observances of Shabbat. So we are, along with the divine, we are the ones who mikadesh ha-Shabbat, who sanctify time to create Shabbat. Let's move into our prayers for Shabbat. And a reminder, we join together even though we're muted, and sing along even though we're muted. There will come times where we will unmute ourselves and be able to join together. There are days when we seek things for ourselves and measure our failure by what we do not gain. On Shabbat, we seek not to acquire, but to share. And there are days when we exploit nature as if it were a horn of plenty that can never be exhausted. On Shabbat, we stand in wonder before the mystery of creation. There are days when we act as if we cared nothing for the rights of others. On Shabbat, we are reminded that justice is our duty and a better world our goal. So we embrace Shabbat, day of rest, day of wonder, day of peace. We join in the singing of psalms to replicate the days of creation as we join with the cantor in Shiru Ladonai.
Shiru Ladonai, Shiru Shir Chadash, Shiru Ladonai, Kol Haaretz, Shiru Ladonai, Shiru Shir Chadash, Shiru Ladonai, Kol Haaretz. ברכו שמו, בסרו מיום ליום ישועתו, שירו לאדוני ברכו שמו, בסרו מיום ליום ישועתו, שירו לאדוני, שירו שיר חדש, שירו לאדוני כל הארץ, שירו לאדוני, שירו שיר חדש, שירו לאדוני כל הארץ.
We join at the top of the next slide with Yismechu Hashamayim.
ישמחו השמיים ותגל תגל הארץ, ישמחו השמיים ותגל תגל הארץ, ירח הים עולו, ירם הים עולו, ירם הים עולו, ירם הים ומלואו, ישמחו השמיים ותגל תגל הארץ, ישמחו השמיים ותגל תגל הארץ.
Jewish tradition has always been nervous, at least reluctant, to envision an embodied divine, an embodied God. Even if there are times that Scripture speaks of God's hand and God's face and God's foot, nevertheless, we argue for an incorporeal God. But that tendency to want to touch and hold has always existed for all human beings. And so time, Shabbat, is not only that sacred moment we return to, but we embody sacred time in Shabbat as bride and queen, lover and friend, however we imagine the one whose return we await each and every week, not only a sacred moment, but a sacred personage. Lecha Dodi.
Lecha lecha dodi, lika lika kala, bnei bnei Shabbat nekavela. Lecha lecha dodi, lika lika kala, bnei bnei Shabbat nekavela. La 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 la, lecha lecha dodi, lika lika kala, bnei bnei Shabbat nekavela. Lecha lecha dodi, lika lika kala, bnei bnei Shabbat nekavela.
body and or spirit, we rise, face the entry to our homes, and invite Shabbat to enter.
בואי ושלום את ערב בלד, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני ים זה גאולה. בואי חלה, בואי חלה, לה 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 לה, לך לך דעתי, לקראת לקראת גאלה, פני פני שבת נקבלה, לך לך דעתי, לקראת לקראת גאלה, פני פני שבת נקבלה, לה 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 לה, לך לך דעתי, לקראת לקראת גאלה, פני פני שבת נקבלה, לך לך דעתי, לקראת לקראת גאלה, פני פני שבת נקבלה.
And I'll invite you to have a seat if you like at this time, or remain standing if you wish. We join together in Psalm 92, the psalm the Levites sang as pilgrims would be entering in readiness for Shabbat in Jerusalem when the temple still stood.
מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך העליון, ולזמר לשמך העליון. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך העליון, ולזמר לשמך העליון. להגיד בבוקר חסדך, ואמונתך בלילות, עלי עשה בעלי נבר, עלי היגיון בחינות. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון. כי שימחתני אדוני בפועלך, במעשי ידיך ארננה. יעלו מעשיך אדוני, מאוד עמקו מחשבותיך. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון.
We come to Reader's Kaddish again as you are able in body and or spirit. We rise in preparation for the call to worship. Reader's Kaddish separating our Kabbalat Shabbat, our welcoming, inviting of Shabbat, from the main body of the service.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברי חירותי, בימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון, ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בגלה בגלה, ובזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם ולעלמי עלמיה, יתברך יתברך וישתבח, ויתפעה ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתעדה ויתעלה ויתעלל שמי לקודשה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן ועלמה וימרו Amen.
And we join now with the cantor and the call to worship.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך ברוך אדוני המבורך המבורך לעולם ועד המבורך המבורך לעולם ועד.
If you'd like to have a seat for a bit, we join together in the creation prayer. Praise to you, Adonai our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai, Ma'ariv Aravim. We join together with the cantor in the singing of Ahavat Olam.
אהבת עולם בית ישראל עמך אהבת עמך אהבת תורה ומצוות חוקים ומשפטים אותנו אותנו לימדת על כן אדוני אלוהינו בשוכבנו ובקומנו נשיח בחוקיך ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו ובהם נגי יומם בלילה נגי יומם בלילה ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני כבוד מלכותו לעולם ועד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ושוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, and that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there's no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together. We join with the cantor in the singing of the Michamocha.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה. מלכותך ראו בניך, בוקע ים לפני משה ומרים. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני גואל ישראל.
We who look forward to laying our heads down at night have sometimes forgotten that sleep could be a fearful moment, to allow ourselves to lose control, not knowing what the morning would bring, not knowing if night had safety within it. Hashkivenu represents our aspiration that night rest not only be restorative to our body, but that our souls be at peace and we awaken to a world that offers the opportunities for peace and betterment in the coming day.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Ushmor tzitenu uboenu lechaim u'leshalom me'ata ve'ad olam. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu אתה אדוני הפורס סוכת שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל, ועל ירושלים ועל כל עמו, ועל ירושלים שלום, ועל ירושלים ועל כל עמו, ועל ירושלים שלום. ברוך אתה אדוני הפורס סוכת שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל, שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל.
One of the metaphors of Jewish life is Brit. We are called B'nai Brit, the children of the covenant. What is a covenant but an agreement? Something more than a mere contract, an agreement between the divine and the people of Israel for all generations. Shabbat, we are told, is an oath, a sign of that covenant, a touchstone that embodies within it the much larger greatness of the agreement. We are told that if the people of Israel would keep but one, perhaps two Shabbats truly, that Mashiach would arrive. A beautiful legend. Nevertheless, it is true that without Shabbat there is no Judaism, and in truth no Jewish people. But without the Jewish people there cannot be Shabbat. It is a covenant for all time, an oti le'olam.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני, עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
I invite you again, as you are able in body and or spirit, to arise as we face towards the Jerusalem of this world or the Jerusalem of the upper worlds, and turn our prayers before the divine throne on behalf of our community.
שפתי תפתח, ופי יגיד, ופי יגיד תהילתך. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו, אלוהי אברהם, אלוהי יצחק ואלוהי יעקב, אלוהי שרה, אלוהי רבקה, אלוהי רחל ואלוהי לאה, האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, מביא גאולה לבני בניהם למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הטל, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומדומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישוע, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל, ברוך אתה אדוני מחיה הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יחללוך הסלע, ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
And if you'd like to have a seat, if that's your custom, please do. If you'd like to remain standing through Shalom Rav at the end, that's also a custom in our community. We join together. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day, and may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai mikadesh haShabbat. Together, ever-present one, may we, your people Israel, be worthy in our deeds and our prayer, wherever we live, wherever we seek you, in this land, in Zion restored in all lands. You are our God, whom alone we serve in reverence. Baruch atah Adonai, shotecha levadecha b'yirah na'avod. God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth which day by day sustains us. For all these and more, we offer thanks. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shemcha ulecha na'eh lehodot. And finally, prayer for peace. Shalom Rav.
Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki ata melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki ata melech adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. תשים לעולם. תשים לעולם.
Baruch atah Adonai hamivarech et amo Yisrael b'shalom. We take these moments now, unscripted, for our own private, our own silent prayer, reflection, meditation.
יהיו לרצון נמרי פי והגיון ליבי לפניך אדוני צורי אדוני צורי וגואלי
So Shabbat Shalom again, everyone. Let me just find my way across my desktop now to my sermon for tonight. Take a moment. There we go. So last Shabbat, on Shabbat morning, our bat mitzvah, our final bat mitzvah of the season, of the year, 40 b'nei benot mitzvah, Sarah Coco, observed, and our final delayed bar bat mitzvah from COVID. Our bat mitzvah of last Shabbat morning, Sarah Coco, observed in her Devar Torah for Parshat Balak, that was last week's Parshat Balak, that quote, "The last part is completely out of the blue, as if one finished the last chapter of a book and read a bit more of the next before putting it down," unquote. Sarah's observation was bullseye accurate. And since her focus was on the story of King Balak of Moab and the sorcerer prophet Bilam, there was no need to resolve the question from her summary of why Numbers chapter 25 is appended to last week's portion, when by all sense and context, it should probably be the opening chapter of this week's parasha, Pinchas. To summarize Numbers chapter 25, broken between two weekly portions, the Israelites, still wandering, are at Shittim when they decide to join the Moabite women in the idolatrous worship of the Moabite gods. Now keep in mind that the Moabite king Balak had just tried to lay a whammy, supernatural whammy, on the Israelites and failed. Now God, who we know doesn't take kindly to the Israelites worshiping other gods. You notice that idolatry and adultery have a relationship. God demands that Moses publicly impale all the tribal leadership. Moses delegates the task. A divine plague, meanwhile, breaks out amongst the Israelites. Amid all this, an Israelite man, an unspecified Israelite man, in full view of the community, brings a Midianite woman into his tent. And yes, we oddly and inexplicably switch from Moabite women to Midianite women for the remainder of the story. Pinchas, that's Phineas in English, the son of Eleazar the high priest, sees this. He abandons his place in the communal assembly. He grabs his spear in hand. He rushes uninvited into this man's tent, and finding them in an undescribed, compromising position, runs them through. The text describes belly to belly, in flagrante delicto, with his spear. The plague ceases immediately, and so does the Parsha. There at Numbers chapter 25, verse 9, Parashat Balak oddly ends, only to pick up the action in the very next sentence, verse 10, at the beginning of this week's Parsha, named for Pinchas, or again, Phineas in English. Now, one verse later, or a whole week later, we are offered a public commendation spoken by God to Moses. Pinchas, the son of Eleazar, son of Aaron the priest, has turned back my wrath from the people of Israel by displaying among them his passion for me, so that I did not wipe out the people of Israel in my own passion. Say therefore, I grant to him my pact of shalom. It shall be for him and his descendants after him a pact of priesthood for all time, because he took impassioned action for his God, thus making expiation for the Israelites. By that way, that notion of passion and impassioned used to be translated as jealous or jealousy. The remaining verses of chapter 25 detail the names and tribal affiliations of both the Israelite man and the Midianite woman, who Pinchas speared, as well as a divine command to assail the Midianites for their treachery. And yes, those of you who remember correctly that Moses is indeed married to a Midianite, Zipporah, and her dad, Moses' father-in-law Jethro, is the priest and tribal leader of the Midianites. It's hard to know what to make of this. Chapter 26 then takes up with another lengthy census of the Israelite tribes and their subclans for the divisioning of land. Chapter 27 recounts the story of the daughters of Zelophehad and the commissioning of Joshua as Moses' successor, along with a reminder that Moses is to be punished by not being allowed to enter the Promised Land. Chapters 28 and 29, the last two chapters of our Parsha, are a very detailed listing of the animal, grain, and liquid sacrifices to be offered to God daily, weekly, monthly, on Shabbats and holy days. Without doubt, the 18 total verses that make up chapter 25 of the book of Numbers and are evenly split between Parshat Balak, 9 verses, and Parshat Pinchas, 9 verses, could have far more easily been assigned to the end of Balak, or I think the beginning of Pinchas. The choice to divide this brief and violent narrative between the end of one week's portion and the beginning of another serves only to diminish and isolate a story that I imagine the rabbis felt could not be eliminated altogether. The Talmudic rabbis are clear that this story is not under any circumstances to be used as a justification for anyone else to do as Pinchas did. Our rabbinic sources struggle with the absence of any juridical process or deliberative body before Pinchas takes the law into his own hands. This contravenes the rabbi's own judicial norms, and they therefore try to recast, minimize, or isolate Pinchas's actions. There's a conversation preserved in the Talmud of the land of Israel, what we call the Yerushalmi in Sanhedrin, suggesting that if it were not for the Torah telling us that God rewards Pinchas with eternal priesthood and to his descendants, the sages would have excommunicated him on the spot. The Jerusalem Talmud doesn't define the rabbi's precise objection to Pinchas's actions, although we can imagine. They concede that he acted technically in accord, or at least permission, with the Torah's laws, and still they declare, Shelo beratzon hachamim. It did not accord with the desire of the sages. Even within the hand-scribed lettering of the Torah scroll, there is an ancient indication of concern about Pinchas's actions. That Brit Shalom, that covenant of peace given to Pinchas in supposed reward for his actions, is scribed, the word Shalom is scribed with a broken letter Vav. Shin, Lamed, Vav, Mem. But that Vav is cracked or broken. The implication being that something is not right. Something is at least imperfect here. In fact, several commentators opine that Pinchas's covenant of peace is actually a covenant of restraint, an imposition of peace upon Pinchas and his offspring, who have apparently inherited the violent inclinations of their tribal ancestor, Levi. Pinchas's assignment as a priest, then, is not so much a reward as a divine attempt to curb his and his family's tendency toward violence. The tradition of Levi, Pinchas, and the prophet Elijah, the main character of this week's accompanying Haftarah, as hotheads is worth mentioning. These are all men who have a tendency toward an immediate and violent response. And it is all too easy then to simply dismiss them or isolate them, which is exactly how we deal with their problematic behaviors and stories. They are them. They are not us. But perhaps, just perhaps, we might try to look for and acknowledge that there is a bit of them in each of us. A tendency toward rash and immediate judgment and action, a desire to take judgment into our own hands, a willingness to feed our own righteous indignation. The dividing, the literal breaking of this narrative between two weekly portions is, I think, a message to each of us to break and stop, control and isolate our own tendencies towards snap judgments and self-righteousness. Most of us are, I think, unlikely to take a spear in hand, but the power of our words and our other actions can be just as penetrating and even deadly. The cautionary rabbinic lesson of Parshat Pinchas is that being right in our viewpoint or judgment doesn't automatically make our actions in response right or just. Instead, this story teaches us that we must separate our actions, our responses, from our immediate reactions and judgments. Only then, I think, can we hope to establish a real and lasting, a complete shalom. Shabbat Shalom. As always, I'm grateful for the chance to share my thoughts and reactions with you, and I invite you after Shabbat, if you want to send an email, that would be terrific. I look forward to the dialogue. We are going to turn our thoughts to our Misha Beirach. Let me share our screen, and of course, I want to make special mention before we continue, although It is a difficult moment down in Miami. Of course, we are thinking of the survivors, and we're thinking of everyone who is worried and all of those yet to be discovered. We hope for the best, and we know what probabilities there are, but our prayers go out always for miracles when miracles can happen. And so I want to share those thoughts right now with all of you, and invite, if you want to share the names of a loved one in the chat, or just unmute yourself and share a name right now for the Misha Berach prayer. Let me do the screen share here, just a moment. There we go. And anyone who wants to share a name for the Misha Berach for the healing prayers. And take a moment, just if anyone wants to type in a name. Susan Haber. Steve is thinking of his cousin Linda. Elaine Lawrence. Delphine Fagagaltier. I apologize, Erica, if I'm not pronouncing that. Lynn Shapiro. Lisi, David, Carlene. Anybody else? Judy Lichtenfeld. David Radin, Howard Orlin, Henry Wolstadt, Helen Perlstein. I invite us to join in singing the prayer, Debbie Friedman, Aleha Shalom, setting with a cantor now.
Mi sheberach avoteinu mekor haberacha leimoteinu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mi sheberach imoteinu mekor haberacha le'avoteinu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
Kain Yehi Ratzon, may it be God's will. I invite you to join with me in our prayer for our nation and then for the state of Israel. O guardian of life and liberty, may our nation always merit your protection. Grant our leaders wisdom and forbearance. May they govern with justice and compassion. Help us all to appreciate one another and to respect the many ways that we may serve you. May our homes be safe from affliction and strife, and our country sound in body and spirit. Amen. O Heavenly One, protector and redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel, which marks the dawning of hope for all who seek peace. Shield it beneath the wings of your love, spread over it the canopy of your peace. Send your light and truth to all who lead and advise, guiding them with your good counsel. Strengthen the hands of those who defend our holy land, grant them deliverance, and adorn them in a mantle of victory. Establish peace in the land and fullness of joy for all who dwell there. Amen. I also will share, although we're not going to bench Rosh Chodesh, the month of Av begins next Shabbat. The first day of Av will be actually next Friday evening. The cantor and I will make the blessings to announce the month at that time. And of course, that is the beginning of a contrition period when we look back over some of the historical calamities of our people and our own misdeeds. It starts us, of course, on that journey leading up after Av to Elul, to the month of contrition that prepares us for Tishrei and the new year. The whole linkage of the summer we sometimes forget. We just observed the 17th of Tammuz, the day of the sin of the golden calf. According to rabbinic tradition, now we've entered into Av, the breaking of that covenant between God and the Jewish people that was established back on Shavuot, right? So if we think of the flow of the holidays in the summer, Shavuot was the wedding at Sinai, the Ketubah was the Torah, our people together, but right away we have marital problems between the divine and our people. And the notion of a broken or imperfect covenant reflected in that scribal tradition I mentioned is of course hinted at all the way from a few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, 17 Tammuz, and we're approaching the 1st of Av and then Tisha B'Av. So the summer is linked, moving us from Shavuot to reconciliation over Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, with more specific announcements about where to expect will be hopefully in the coming weeks. We're going to turn to our concluding prayers. I invite you to rise in body and or spirit as you are able as we join in our concluding prayers.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שהוא שם חלקנו לייחד את שמו, וגורלנו להמליך מלכותו. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגבי מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, כך כתוב בתורתו. וידעת היום בהשבות אל לבביך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
One day, not this day, but one day, God shall be one and called by one name. I, again, want to turn our thoughts to the community of Miami and all those who know that their loved ones have perished and whose bodies have been recovered, and those many, many families who are awaiting, praying for a miracle, but knowing that it's so unlikely. Our thoughts go out to them at this time. We also call to mind on this Shabbat Maggie Reinholtz, recalled by Amy Leesman, Norman Gilder, the father of Barbara Zimmerman, remembered by Michael and Aaron and Alicia and Andrew and Louisa and Eli, Arthur Keller, remembered by Judith Keller, Sam Keller, and our entire congregational community, Mario Von DeFrisco, father of our facilities director, Eric DeFrisco, Leonard Len Dome, the father of Lauren Corman, father-in-law of Howard, grandfather of Caroline and Julie, and Israel Ritberg, the father of Kim Ritberg, father-in-law of Alex Nyron and grandfather of Lily and Nathaniel. We also call to mind those whose yahrzeit falls at this season. Walter Rosawi is recalled by Javier Rosawi, Leon Muskin is recalled by Daniel Muskin. George British is recalled by Jan Erica British. J. Leonard Hyman is recalled by Peter Hyman. Arthur Fishbein is recalled by Susan Sporer. Jesse Meyer Powell is recalled by the congregation. Harry Spire is recalled by Deborah Spire and my family. Joshua Field is recalled by Matthew Bloom. Gerard Newsy is recalled by Ellen Kaufman Newsy. Jean Kornfeld is recalled by Seth Kornfeld. Ruth E. Hoffenberg is recalled by the congregation. Michael Lipp is recalled by myself and my family. Sylvia Ross is recalled by Leah Ross Kugler. Ruth Sarner is recalled by William Gutman. Louise Schwartz is recalled by Judith Eidenberg. Mary Krasnick is recalled by the congregation. Morden Committee is recalled by Eric Committee. Israel Ritberg is again recalled by Lily and Kim and Alex. Sal Nagler is recalled by Nancy Lazar. Albert Collado is recalled by Janice Collado. Raymond Craig is recalled by Carla Craig. Abigail Jana Brodsky is recalled by David Brodsky, Ronnie Mann, Jacob and Emma, and the entire congregational community. Milton Meyer is recalled by the congregation. Sally Neidenberg is recalled by Paul Neidenberg. David Marcus is recalled by Yigal Reckman. Michelle Hoffman is recalled by Jared Hoffman. Bernice Sternbach is recalled by Donald Goldberg. Lindsay Barron is recalled by Daniel Atkins. Estelle Wallace is recalled by Anita Goldstein, and Sophie Schwartz is recalled by Judith Eidenberg. I want to invite you to unmute yourself or to share on the chat the names of any loved ones that you are recalling at this time. I see Theodore Tremblay, Murray Ressler, Sylvia Frank, and please feel free to unmute yourself and share names as well in that way, or to send it on the chat. Peter Newhouse recalls his son Harry and his family. Steve Sachs remembers his mother, Edith Sachs.
My sister, Isla Gross.
Anyone else? I want to invite you, as has become our custom, to unmute yourself so that we can recite Kaddish Yatom, the Mourner's Kaddish, together. I know it's a bit cacophonous, but I assure you that that cacophony will turn to harmony as it arises and rises up and reaches the divine throne. We join together. Yit Gadal v'yit Kadash Shemei Rabba B'alma v'yirach kirutei v'yamlit malchutei V'chayechom yomechom u'chayei v'chol Beit Yisrael B'agala u'man kari v'yimru Amen. Yehei Shemei Bevarach Le'olam Olamei Maya Yitbarach Yitpar V'yitromam V'yitnasei Yitadar V'yitaleh V'yitalal Shmei B'kutas Richu Leilam Yitol Birchata V'shirata Ushtata V'nechemata Amiran B'yalma V'yimru Amen. Yehei Shalom Rabba Shemaya V'chayim Aleinu V'yal Yisrael Imru Amen. Osei Shalom V'romav Huya Aleinu V'yal Yisrael Imru Amen. May the source of peace on high cause peace to descend upon us, all Israel, our entire world, and let us say,
Amen.
Oseh shalom imroma kol Israel שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל.
V'meru. Amen. Please be seated if you like. I don't know if we're in summer mode. So
I'm here.
Are you here, Marcia? Would you like
Yeah.
to share tonight's announcements, please?
I would. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Thank you, Rabbi and Cantor. We have a few doings this week. Tomorrow, Havara is 9:30 with Rabbi Lip. Everybody should know that due to construction, we have summer offices. We have moved temporarily to 33 Clinton Street. And if you call the main number and press 121 extension, you will reach a live person. The Israeli Movie Watch Group has a movie next week, The Kindergarten Teacher by Navad Lapid. Hebrew reading for adults on Zoom is Tuesday, July 6th through Tuesday, August 24th, taught by Rabbi Sue Orn, 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. And both religious school registration is open, and we have an early childhood program, Outdoor Summer Fun with BHS. And that is all of the announcements. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Have a great 4th of July.
Thank you, Marcia. Shabbat Shalom. So just a word about Rabbi Oren's Hebrew class. It is intended for those who want to rebuild their Hebrew decoding skills. So if your ability to recognize an aleph from a bet and a komutz from a patach have kind of rusted away and you want to rebuild that most basic level, this is the course for you over the summer. It's just getting the consonants and the vowels reacquainted with their sounds and phonetic decoding. Nothing more advanced, but very, very important. Also a reminder, the Cantor is going to be leading Tisha B'Av services Sunday morning, July 18th. And perhaps, Cantor, you'll say one other word about that, please.
Yes, I will be joined by student Rabbi Healy Slackman, and our theme for this year's Tisha B'Av will be to reflect on our past year. It's a day of mourning, so in that tradition, we will allow ourselves space to mourn the things that we lost, the people we lost, the time we lost, the jobs we lost, and hold on to each other for that moment. It will begin at 10 a.m. on Sunday the 18th.
Thank you. And just a reminder, we're on Zoom. We're on Zoom not because of COVID. We're on Zoom because there's construction. And right now, if you were to walk by 117 and 117, 131, whatever our numbers are, you would notice there's scaffolding everywhere. There's no one in the building because there's dust and construction. That's why, as Marcia told you, we're at 33 Clinton Street with our temporary offices. We hope to be back at 131 Remsen by the end of August. You'll get to hear about it. But that's why we're on Zoom for our Fridays, except, as I mentioned, once in July, once in August. We'll be back in Brooklyn Bridge Park, out of doors, weather providing. Our closing song tonight is, I believe, Adon Olam, to a familiar melody as we celebrate the holiday weekend.
אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא לעד נשא בחפצו כל אזי מלך שמו נקרא ואחרי ככלות הכל לבדו לא ימלוך נורא, והוא היה והוא הווה והוא יהיה בתפארה, והוא אחד ואין שני, להמשילו להכבירה, בלי ראשית בלי תכלית, ולא העוז והמשרה, והוא אלי וחי גואלי, בצור חבלי בעת צרה, והוא ניסי ומנוס לי, מנת כוסי ביום אקרא, בידו אף כדרוכי, ביתי שם בעירה, ואם רוחי גביעתי, אדוני לי ולא אירא.
I invite you, if you have your Kiddush cup at the ready, to raise it up as the cantor begins Kiddush for us.
ויהי ערב ויהי בוקר יום השישי, ויחולו השמיים והארץ וכל צבאם, ויחל אלוהים ביום השביעי מלאכתו אשר עשה, וישבות ביום השביעי מקום מלאכתו אשר עשה, ויברך אלוהים את יום השביעי ויקדש אותו, כי בו שבת מקום מלאכתו אשר ברא אלוהים לעשות. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, בורא פרי הגפן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר קידשנו במצוותיו ורצבנו, ושבת קודשו באהבה וברצון הנחילנו, זיכרון למעשה וראשית, כי הוא יום תחילה למקראי קודש, זכר יציאת מצרים. כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ושבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת.
Amen. L'chaim. And if you have your challah at the ready, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. B'tei avon, everyone. You can unmute yourselves. We'll stop the share. I'm going to leave the Zoom running if you feel like kibitzing for a while. And again, I'll be facilitating Havurah tomorrow morning at 9:30, and the cantor and I will be back next Friday. Shabbat